John D. Rockefeller controlled 90% of America's oil by 1880, and here's the trick that made it legal. By the 1870s, oil refining in America was chaos. Hundreds of small refineries competed on price alone, margins collapsed, and nobody made real money. Rockefeller watched this bloodbath from Cleveland and saw something his competitors didn't. Consolidation wasn't just smarter, it was inevitable. The question wasn't whether one firm would dominate. It was which one and who'd profit from the consolidation itself. Exhibit 1: Standard Oil's founding in 1870. Rockefeller and his partners built a single refinery in Cleveland. Nothing revolutionary, just one facility among hundreds. But Rockefeller's real product wasn't kerosene, it was efficiency. His refinery operated at costs competitors couldn't match. He paid less for crude, extracted more product per barrel, and shipped at lower rates because he moved volume no one else could touch. Exhibit 2: The Railroad Rebate Scheme. Here's the trick: Rockefeller didn't just negotiate better shipping rates, he negotiated secret rebates. For every barrel Standard Oil shipped, railroads gave him money back. But here's where it got ruthless. Railroads also charged his competitors higher rates and paid Standard Oil a cut of those inflated fees. It was legal extortion dressed up as commerce. Those rebates weren't pocket change. They were the margin that let Standard Oil undercut competitors by 10, sometimes 20%. A small refinery couldn't survive that, so they had two choices: sell to Rockefeller at his price or go bankrupt. Most chose the first option. Between 1870 and 1880, Standard Oil absorbed roughly 120 refineries, not through innovation, through financial asphyxiation. Exhibit 3: Vertical integration. Once Rockefeller owned the refineries, he went upstream and downstream. He bought oil fields to control supply. He built pipelines so he didn't need railroads. He created his own marketing and distribution networks. Every step of the value chain he wanted a piece. By 1880, Standard Oil didn't just refine oil, it owned the entire ecosystem. The money flowed in one direction, toward Cleveland. Standard Oil's profits grew from modest to staggering. By the mid-1880s, the company was generating millions annually, an almost incomprehensible sum for the era. Rockefeller's personal wealth exploded, but he reinvested relentlessly. Every dollar of profit went back into acquiring more refineries, more pipelines, more leverage. Exhibit 4: The trust structure. By 1882, Standard Oil's holdings were so vast and scattered across so many states that managing them became legally messy. So Rockefeller's lawyers invented something new: the trust. Stockholders handed their shares to trustees who voted them as a single block. Standard Oil Trust was born. It was a legal innovation that let one entity control dozens of subsidiary companies while appearing to operate separately. And here's the trick: the trust structure made the monopoly invisible to regulators. Technically, Standard Oil wasn't one company. It was dozens of independent companies controlled by trustees. The law had no framework to stop it. Monopoly existed in fact, but not in legal form. Regulators couldn't touch what they couldn't legally define. By 1890, Standard Oil controlled roughly 90% of American oil refining. 90%. That number demands context. In modern terms, imagine one company controlling 9 of every 10 smartphones sold or 9 of every 10 cars. The scale of dominance was almost totalitarian. And it happened because Rockefeller understood something most of his peers didn't. Monopoly power comes from controlling costs, not from owning patents or exclusive rights. The antitrust movement eventually caught up. Theodore Roosevelt's administration sued Standard Oil in 1906. The Supreme Court ruled it violated the Sherman Antitrust Act in 1911 and ordered its breakup into 34 separate companies. But by then, the damage, or the benefit, depending on your perspective, was done. Rockefeller had already accumulated a personal fortune estimated at nearly $900 million, making him the wealthiest person alive. Here's what's crucial: Standard Oil's dominance wasn't built on a single brilliant innovation or a unique product. Kerosene was kerosene. The oil itself was identical. What Rockefeller mastered was the business model, the mechanics of cost control, the leverage of scale, the legal architecture that made consolidation possible. He followed the cash, eliminated waste, and exploited every structural advantage the market offered. The Standard Oil breakup created companies like Chevron, Exxon, and Mobil, firms that dominated oil for another century. The legal precedent shaped how America would regulate monopolies forever. But the real legacy was the playbook: consolidate aggressively, control costs obsessively, structure legally to stay ahead of regulation, and reinvest profits into further dominance. That template didn't die with Standard Oil. It evolved. So the claim holds: Rockefeller mastered monopoly not through innovation, but through understanding where money actually flowed and controlling every lever that moved it. The railroad rebates, the vertical integration, the trust structure, these weren't accidents of genius. They were deliberate financial engineering. Standard Oil didn't dominate because oil was scarce or because Rockefeller had a better product. It dominated because he understood leverage better than anyone else in America. The story of Standard Oil is ultimately a story about cash flow and structural advantage. Follow the money, that's where the real monopoly lived, not in the product. in the system that made the product cheaper to deliver than anyone else could manage. That's the forensic accounting lesson. Empires aren't built on what you sell. They're built on where your costs go and how you control them. If you want to understand how the world's most dominant companies actually work, how they follow the money, structure their advantages, and reshape entire industries, that's exactly what this channel deconstructs. Every week we trace the cash line through another iconic brand's rise to dominance. Subscribe so you don't miss the next one. This video is for educational and informational purposes only and is not financial advice. Always do your own research. Subscribe so you don't miss the next one. This video is for educational and informational purposes only and is not financial advice. Always do your own research.